The Galactic Concordium Academy was a place of endless noise and bright colors, a giant hub where beings from across the stars came to learn. Its tall, gleaming towers reached for the sky, and inside, its wide hallways buzzed with the sounds of different languages and the movements of countless strange and wonderful creatures. There were beings covered in shimmering scales, others with soft, warm fur, and some who glowed with their own inner light, creating a living rainbow. The main refectory, a huge room with many tables, was usually the loudest place of all. Laughter echoed, food was shared, and friends gathered in happy groups. But in one quiet corner, near a tall, arched window that looked out onto the endless stars, there was always one table that stayed empty. It was never touched, never used. At this table, hunched slightly over a small, untouched meal, sat a young alien girl named Lyra. She was a Lumen, a species known for communicating through beautiful, changing patterns of light that danced on their skin. Most Lumen shone brightly, their bodies alive with vibrant, shifting colors that told stories, shared feelings, and spoke words without a sound. But Lyra was different. Her own glow was faint, so dim it was almost impossible to see, like a candle, flame struggling against a strong wind. It was just a muted shimmer, barely there, a weak light that others saw as a sign of her inert nature. They called her useless, a genetic mistake, someone who couldn't contribute to their highly expressive, light-based society. To them she was broken, a silent instrument in an orchestra of light. Whenever she was near, other Lumen would subtly dim their own brilliant displays, as if her dullness was something that could spread, a shadow that might touch their own bright lives. They would turn their backs or move away with quiet, polite excuses. No one, not a single being from any of the countless species at the academy, had ever dared to sit beside her. She was a ghost in a vibrant world, always present, but never truly seen, always alone. Her days were a quiet cycle of attending classes, sitting alone, and returning to her small, silent room. The loneliness was a heavy cloak she wore, a constant companion that pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe sometimes. She had learned to expect it, to accept the empty chairs around her as her natural space in the universe. She watched others, their easy laughter and shared moments, with a quiet ache that she tried to hide, even from herself. She was used to the whispers, the quick glances, the subtle shifts away from her. It was her normal dot. Then came Kale. He was a human, a new face in the academy, having arrived only a few weeks ago from a distant blue-green planet. Unlike many others, he didn't come with a lot of ideas about how things should be. He had a simple, quiet way of looking at the world, a deep curiosity that wasn't clouded by what he expected to see. He had watched Lyra from afar for several days, not with pity, but with a quiet understanding of the deep, profound loneliness that seemed to cling to her like a second skin. He saw the way her shoulders slumped, the way her eyes, though large and dark, held a distant sadness. He saw the empty table, day after day, and the way others avoided it as if it were cursed. It wasn't pity that moved him, but a simple human recognition of someone in need of connection. On a particularly crowded lunch period, the refectory was packed. Every single table was full, every seat taken, save for the one in the quiet corner. Kale, holding his tray of Academy Standard nutrient paste and synth fruit, looked around. His eyes settled on Lyra's table. Without a moment's hesitation, without a single thought for what others might think or say, he walked directly towards it. The loud chatter across the refectory, which had been a buzzing symphony moments before, slowly died down. Heads turned. Eyes, hundreds of them, from every species imaginable, fixed on Cale. A hush fell over the vast room, a sudden, heavy silence that felt louder than any noise. Cale, seemingly unaware of the sudden attention, or perhaps simply not caring, casually slid into the seat directly opposite Lyra. The scrape of the chair on the floor was shockingly loud in the new quiet. Lyra, who had been staring at her untouched. Meal startled violently at his proximity. Her body flinched, a quick involuntary movement of fear. Her faint glow, which was already so dim, almost entirely extinguished, making her appear as a shadowed silhouette against the bright lights of the room. She looked up, her wide, dark eyes meeting Cale's. He offered a simple, gentle smile, a small, kind curve of his lips that reached his eyes. There was no judgment in his gaze, no mockery, no pity. Just a calm, open look. He began to eat his meal, slowly, calmly, as if sitting with an inert lumen was the most normal thing in the world. He left the silence unbroken, allowing her space, not pushing her, not demanding anything. The quiet stretched, long and strained, filled only with the soft sounds of Cale eating and Lyra's shallow breaths. She watched him, her mind racing, trying to understand. Was this a trick? Was he going to laugh? But he just kept eating, his presence steady and real. After what felt like an eternity, a minuscule, almost imperceptible shimmer pulsed on Lyra's skin. It was a hesitant, uncertain pattern, a tiny flicker of light that spoke of a fragile hope she hadn't known she still possessed. Then, in a voice, so soft it was like the faintest rustle of dry leaves, a sound so delicate Cale had to strain to hear it, she breathed out 2 words. They were barely a whisper, carried on a fragile breath, but they held the weight of a lifetime of solitude. "You're my first friend." Cale simply nodded, a silent acknowledgment that didn't sensationalize her revelation, a quiet acceptance that spoke volumes without a single word. He didn't offer a dramatic reply or a grand gesture. He just continued to eat his meal, his presence, a steady, unwavering anchor in the swirling chaos of Lyra's emotions. From that day forward, the empty chair at Lyra's table was never empty again. It was always occupied by Cale, a silent promise kept. He never pressed her for conversation, never pushed her to speak more than she was comfortable with. Instead, he would share mundane observations about academy life, recounting a humorous incident in a biology class where a sentient plant had sneezed all over the professor, or describing the strange, shifting architecture of his homeworld Earth, with its ever-changing cities and vast blue oceans. He talked about the taste of his synth fruit, the difficulty of understanding the complex mathematics of the xylos, or the peculiar habits of the Academy's cleaning drones. His voice was calm, his tone gentle, and his stories were simple, everyday, things that slowly, painstakingly, began to chip away at the thick wall of isolation Lyra had built around herself. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Lyra began to respond. Her whispers, initially so faint they were barely audible, grew infinitesimally clearer, like a distant echo, gradually becoming more distinct. Her faint light patterns, which had once been so inconsistent they seemed to vanish, became marginally more consistent, though still barely visible to the naked eye, a shy, hesitant flicker. She confessed the depth of her isolation, the profound loneliness that had been her constant companion since she was a child. She spoke of how she'd always been an outcast among her own kind, unable to project like other lumen, unable to create the vibrant, expressive light displays that were so vital to their communication and culture. She felt perpetually like a broken instrument in an orchestra of light, a silent note, in a grand, shimmering symphony. Cale listened patiently, his steady presence a grounding anchor in her solitary existence. He didn't offer solutions or pity. He simply listened, his gaze unwavering, his quiet understanding a balm to her wounded spirit. He never once made her feel like her uselessness was a burden or a flaw, only something that made her uniquely Lyra Dutt as their unusual friendship solidified, growing stronger with each shared silence and whispered word. Cale began to notice peculiar details about Lyra's supposed uselessness. He observed that when she was deeply focused on something, perhaps trying to understand a complex concept in a lecture, or when she was particularly stirred by an emotion, a rare flicker of amusement at one of Cale's stories, or a fleeting moment of sadness recounting her past, her faint patterns, though still incredibly dim, appeared to be incredibly intricate. They were almost microscopic in their detail, a dizzying array of tiny, complex shifts and pulses that seemed far more elaborate than the broad, sweeping displays of other lumen. It was as if her light was compressed, holding vast amounts of information in a tiny, almost invisible space. He also began to observe subtle energy fluctuations within the Academy's various systems. A minor power surge in a nearby hallway, a fleeting communication distortion in the lecture hall's audio system, a strange momentary flicker in the holographic displays. These small, almost unnoticeable glitches seemed to coincide, almost imperceptibly, with Lyra's most complex internal light expressions. It was a faint connection, a pattern he couldn't quite grasp, but the coincidence nagged at him, a persistent whisper at the back of his mind. He would see Lyra's light shift in a particularly intricate way, and then, moments later, a distant light fixture would briefly dim, or a data pad would stutter. He couldn't connect the dots in a logical way, but the feeling that there was something more to Lyra, something profound and hidden, grew stronger with each passing day. Their bond, once a source of quiet whispers and unnoticed companionship, was now drawing more attention. The initial shock of Cale sitting with Lyra had faded, replaced by a simmering undercurrent of curiosity and judgment. Some students, particularly those from species known for their open-mindedness, regarded Cale with a mix of curiosity and confusion. They couldn't understand why he would choose to spend time with someone so inert, someone who offered so little in return, at least on the surface. Others, especially the more traditional lumen, and those from species who valued outward displays of power and status, openly scoffed. They dismissed his connection with the useless lumen as a peculiar human eccentricity, a naive and pointless endeavor. Whispers followed them through the refectory, through the hallways, and even into the quiet corners of the library. Why? Does he bother? One student might hiss, "She's just a drain," another might mutter. Lyra, though she tried to ignore it, felt the weight of these glances and whispers. Her faint glow would dim even further, and she would shrink into herself, her shoulders hunching more acutely. Cale, however, remained steadfast. He would sometimes meet the stares with a calm, unyielding gaze, a silent challenge that usually made the other students look away. He never spoke about the whispers or the stares, never acknowledged the judgment, simply continuing to treat Lyra with the same quiet respect and unwavering friendship. This unwavering support, this simple act of seeing her, was slowly, painstakingly, building something new within Lyra. A fragile seed of confidence, a tiny spark of self-worth, began to take root in the barren landscape of her isolation. She still struggled with her own self-doubt, the years of being called useless having left deep scars, but Cale's presence was a constant reminder that perhaps, just perhaps, she wasn't as broken as everyone, including herself, believed. Subtle energy fluctuations continued, growing slightly more pronounced, slightly more frequent, each one a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor in the Academy's vast systems, a silent echo of Lyra's unseen inner world, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. The stage was set, unknowingly to everyone but Cale, for a revelation that would shake the very foundations of their understanding. The Galactic Concordium Academy, usually a beacon of interconnectedness, a constant hum of data streams and interstellar chatter, was suddenly plunged into an unsettling silence. It began subtly, a faint crackle on the main public address system, a momentary flicker in the holographic displays that lined the grand hallways. Then, with a jarring abruptness, the primary come array, the vital link that connected the entire Academy to the vast galactic Concordium network, went dead. Not with a bang or a spark, but with a chilling, absolute cessation of all external communication. The screens in the Central Operations Hub, moments before alive with star charts and incoming messages, now displayed nothing but a swirling, chaotic pattern of static, an incomprehensible cacophony of what engineers could only describe as noise. It wasn't a physical breakdown. The array's massive energy conduits were intact, its intricate circuits glowing faintly as they should. Yet its energy signature had devolved into an utterly meaningless jumble, a scrambled mess that defied all attempts at recalibration. Panic, a cold, creeping dread, began to ripple through the student body and faculty. Whispers turned to shouts, then to desperate questions. Hours stretched into an agonizing eternity as the Academy became an isolated island in the cosmic ocean. Emergency services, external fleets, even simple messages to worried families, all were cut off. The very air in the Academy seemed to thicken with unspoken fear. Highly skilled technicians from various species, their faces grim, worked tirelessly around the clock. Seasoned engineers from the brilliant, light-manipulating Lumen, known throughout the galaxy for their mastery of energy fields, pored over the schematics, their own light patterns flickering with frustration. Advanced diagnostic tools capable of dissecting the most complex energy signatures registered nothing but an overwhelming, chaotic static that defied their understanding, mocking their expertise. Commander Rax, a gruff, experienced Vorlag with multiple cybernetic enhancements and a reputation for solving the unsolvable, paced the operations floor, his heavy footsteps echoing the growing desperation. His team had exhausted every conventional method, every theoretical approach, every last ounce of their considerable knowledge. The Cummer ray remained a dead, noisy void. The situation was dire, and hope was rapidly fading. Amidst the mounting desperation, a desperate, almost reckless surge of intuition struck Cale. He remembered his quiet observations of Lyra's unique, intricate patterns. The way her faint glow seemed to subtly coincide with those fleeting energy shifts within the Academy's systems. It was a long shot, a crazy idea, but what else was there? Taking a deep breath, he approached Commander Rax, who was currently barking orders at a frantic team of engineers. "Commander," Cale began, his voice surprisingly steady amidst the chaos, "I believe Lyra might be able to help." Commander Rax's multifaceted eyes, narrowed with exhaustion and irritation, turned slowly. "The inert Lumin?" He scoffed, his voice laced with disbelief and a touch of anger. "Don't be absurd, human. We need a solution, not a distraction. We have real engineers here, not a child who can barely glow." His words, sharp and dismissive, cut through the air. Lyra, who had followed Cale, her faint presence usually unnoticed, flinched violently at the commander's harsh tone. Her already faint patterns flickered with intense distress, almost vanishing entirely. She recoiled, shrinking back, her large eyes filling with a familiar, deep sadness. I can't," she whispered to Cale, her voice trembling, barely audible, over the hum of failing machinery. "He's right. I'm useless. I'll only make it worse. I always do." The years of being told she was nothing, of being an outcast, weighed heavily on her, but Cale looked at her with unwavering conviction, his gaze calm and steady, a silent promise of belief. "Just try, Lyra," he urged, his voice soft but firm, cutting through the rising tension in the room. "Trust me." His simple words, devoid of pressure but full of quiet encouragement, were a lifeline. Commander Rax, seeing no other viable options, and desperate enough to try anything, even a human's absurd suggestion, reluctantly, skeptically waved a hand, granting permission. It was a gesture of last resort, a desperate gamble. "Fine," he grumbled, "but don't expect miracles." Cale gently guided Lyra towards the massive, silent Cummer ray. The air around it crackled with the chaotic, incomprehensible noise that had paralyzed the Academy. Lyra, her small frame trembling, focused intensely. She extended her hand, her almost invisible light patterns beginning to pulse with a new, subtle rhythm. As her faint glow interacted with the overwhelming static, a strange transformation began. It wasn't noise at all. It was an incredibly dense, multi-layered energy signature, far more complex than any known to the Concordium, a symphony of data so intricate it had been mistaken for chaos. Lyra's uselessness wasn't a lack of power, but an overabundance of subtle, hyper-focused precision, an ability to perceive and manipulate energy at a microscopic level that no other being had ever achieved. Her seemingly faint patterns were, in fact, an incredibly compressed and highly sophisticated form of energy communication, a language of light that only she could perceive, understand, and resonate with. Slowly, painstakingly, the Cummer ray began to hum back to life. The chaotic static began to resolve layer by layer into distinct, coherent signals. The screens in the operations hub flickered, then stabilized, displaying clear, strong data streams. The silence that had gripped the academy was replaced by the familiar, comforting sounds of interstellar communication, a symphony of connection. Restored. Lyra, her body now faintly glowing with a steady, soft light, had done the impossible. With the Gamma ray fully restored, its once chaotic static now a clear, strong hum of interstellar data, a stunned silence fell over the operations hub. The engineers, their faces etched with exhaustion moments before, now stared at the revitalized screens with wide, disbelieving eyes. Commander Rax, the gruff Vorlag who had scoffed at Cale's suggestion, stood frozen, his multifaceted gaze fixed on Lyra. He watched as the complex, vibrant patterns of the retuned Gamma ray pulsed in perfect harmony with a faint, yet now undeniably steady, glow emanating from Lyra herself. It was as if she was not just fixing the machine, but speaking its very language, understanding its deepest, most intricate secrets. The realization dawned on them, slowly at first, then with a blinding clarity. Lyra hadn't simply fixed the array using known methods. She had retuned it to resonate with its true, profoundly complex energy signature, a feat previously thought utterly impossible by even the most advanced Lumen engineers. She had, in essence, communicated with the array on a fundamental, intricate level that surpassed their most sophisticated diagnostic tools, a level of precision and understanding that made their own advanced technology seem crude by comparison. Her uselessness wasn't a lack of power. It was an overabundance of subtle, hyper-focused precision, an ability to perceive and manipulate energy at a microscopic scale that no other being had ever achieved. Her seemingly faint patterns were, in fact, an incredibly compressed and highly sophisticated form of energy communication, a language of light so dense and nuanced that it had been mistaken for mere silence by those who couldn't perceive its depth. The news spread like wildfire through the academy. The inert Lumen, the outcast, the one everyone had dismissed, had saved them all. Her fellow Lumen, who had always shunned her for her muted glow, were now awestruck and profoundly apologetic. Their own vibrant light patterns flickered with a mixture of shame, wonder, and a dawning understanding. They realized with a humbling shock that their entire understanding of Lumen energy projection had been tragically incomplete, that Lyra represented a new, profound evolution of their species, a hidden potential they had blindly ignored. They approached her with hesitant, respectful bows, their apologies sincere and deeply felt. Other species at the academy, from the towering stoic Xylos to the chattering, curious Xylos, regarded her with a mixture of newfound respect and sheer awe. She was no longer a shadow, but a beacon seen as a unique and invaluable asset, a living bridge to a deeper understanding of energy manipulation and interspecies communication. Invitations to research teams poured in, offers of specialized training and requests for her unique insight into energy fields. The quiet corner of the refectory, once avoided, now saw a steady stream of curious and admiring students, eager to catch a glimpse of the Lumen who had redefined their understanding. A power dot, despite her newfound recognition, the apologies from those who had ostracized her, and the sudden clamor for her attention, Lyra's closest bond remained with Cale. Their friendship had deepened into an unbreakable trust, forged in the crucible of her long isolation and the shared revelation of her true abilities. He had seen her when no one else had believed in her, when no one else would, and his simple act of kindness had unlocked a potential that could change the galaxy. She still occasionally whispered, especially when she was tired or overwhelmed by the sudden attention, but now her voice carried a soft, confident resonance, a quiet strength that had not been there before, and her subtle glow, while still not as outwardly brilliant as other lumine, held a new, vibrant warmth, a steady, inner light that spoke of peace and self-acceptance. "You were my first friend, Cale," she would say, her voice a soft melody of gratitude, "and you always will be. You saw me when I was invisible." Cale, the unassuming human who had simply seen beyond appearances, was not hailed as a hero in the grand public sense. He didn't seek accolades or attention, but his simple act of kindness, his unwavering belief in an outcast, became a quiet, profound example across the Concordium Academy. His actions quietly demonstrated that true strength isn't always obvious, and sometimes the most revolutionary breakthroughs and profound connections come from extending a hand to those everyone else has ignored. It was a testament to humanity's unique capacity for empathy and open-mindedness, a quality that had, in turn, opened a new frontier of understanding for the entire Concordium. Lyra, once dismissed as useless, now stood as a living testament to the power of unseen strength, a reminder that the most profound abilities often lie hidden beneath the surface, waiting for someone to simply believe. The Academy, and indeed the Concordium, had learned a vital lesson, that true value is not always loud or bright, and that sometimes the quietest individuals hold the greatest power, waiting for a single act of friendship to illuminate their unseen strength. The universe was vast, full of wonders still undiscovered, and humanity, through Cale's quiet presence, had just shown them one of the most important ones, the boundless potential that lies in simply being kind.